Hello and welcome back to my world of stuff. It's time for another feature film review. Today we're reviewing Back to Black, Sam Taylor Johnson's biopic, The Tragic Life and Times of Amy Winehouse. Hello, welcome back. Welcome to a very wild and windy Monday morning, the 15th of April. Yesterday I popped off to the cinema to see Back to Black, Sam Taylor Johnson's fourth feature film. This time she's directed the story of Amy Winehouse. The tragic story of Amy Winehouse, the star who burned incredibly brightly in the early 21st century and who unfortunately succumbed to her addictive personality and her addictive nature. This is a film that it's almost difficult to review without knowing a lot about Amy Winehouse's life. I mean, I know the public persona of Amy Winehouse as this extraordinary, powerful and soulful singer who mixed jazz and blues and gospel, a little bit of rock and funk, to create this incredibly heady stew on her second studio album, Back to Black, that was released in 2006, that really became a worldwide phenomenon. Such a phenomenon, in fact, that even now, some 13 years after Amy's death, the album is still in the top 100 charts. And it is one of those staple albums that people turn to with good reason, because it's a great album, really powerful album. One of the tragedies of the album that it hints at what she could have gone on to do had she not succumbed to her demon. This is a great film, but as I said, the difficulty in reviewing this film is you need to know probably more about the story of Amy. And what I know is pretty much informed by what the press told us at the time. The press, as the press do, once somebody becomes famous and successful in a desperate attempt to sell newspapers, they hound people and they're at their front doors all the time. They're taking photographs, they're publishing stories, often quite negative, because that sort of stuff sells more newspapers. And I think most people's abiding memories of Amy Winehouse are probably those last few years when she was really falling apart. She'd become a heroin addict, she had a drink problem, and she had this what appeared to be an unhealthy relationship with her husband, Blake Fielder Civil, who led her from the path of the fairly sort of soft drugs that she had been involved with into the more demonic stuff like heroin and cocaine. So I think that it's hard to have a balance on this film because by its very nature, it's telling us a slightly sanitized version of the life of Amy. Of course, what's interesting about the film is that it's the latest in quite a long run of biopics that we've had over the last few years. And in fact, Sam Taylor Johnson herself started her career. Her first film was a biopic of the early years of John Lennon called Nowhere Boy, which came out in 2008, I think it was. And over the last few years, we've had biopics of Queen and Freddie Mercury. We've had biopic of Elton John. We've recently had the biopic of Bob Marley, which I haven't seen yet. And all these films, of course, they chronicle the lives of people who had long careers going back decades. And they have their ups and downs. They have their highs and lows. Amy's career was tragically short. She first appeared in the early 2000s and she was gone by 2011. So it's a much more truncated period of time. The film, in fact, doesn't really place us in any particular era. You need to know a little bit about when Amy was around. I think it might have helped at the beginning if we'd had a caption saying, like 2002 or something, just to sort of place those who might not be incredibly familiar with the story. The film really focuses on Amy as a precocious 18-year-old with a prodigious talent who was determined to make her own way in the music industry. She didn't want to put up with the bullshit. She didn't really want to be associated with Simon Fuller's 19 management because he was responsible for people like the Spice Girls. That's fair to say that Amy didn't have much creative respect for. She's very much her own woman. She was going to do her own thing her way. And I think you've got to respect that in her. And the film sort of takes us through the early years of her torrid beginnings with her father, Mitch, who's played sympathetically here by Eddie Marsan, who, according to the film, had her best interests at heart, wanted to keep her on the straight and narrow when she was determined to come off it. Her uneasy relationship with alcohol, even when she was young, she liked to tipple. She lived at home with her mother, Janice, but Amy's very, very independent at an early age, and she goes out drinking and clubbing and cavorting, but she's got this incredible talent, and that eventually leads her to Island Records, where she releases her first album, which is a success in the UK and in fact a success in America. But her record company, according to the film, don't think it's hugely commercial for America and want to mould her into something else. And this is when she decides, she'll do things at her own pace, at her own time. She eventually creates Back to Black and the legend of Amy Winehouse as we remember her, probably begins at that point. She'd already by now met Blake Fielder Civil, played brilliantly here by Jack O'Connell, and Ascent and Descent begin at the same time. I must, of course, and I can't believe I haven't done already, mention the incredible lead performance here by Marissa Abila, who plays Amy. Marissa's previously known for the BBC Two series Industry, and also, I think, Cobra on Sky One, the sort of political adventure thriller. It's a fantastically powerful performance. She really gets under the skin of Amy. It's not so much the physical resemblance, because she doesn't look exactly like Amy, but she carries her style and her fashion sense and her talent, and that's what she brings to the screen. She looks like her in terms of the physicality and the clothes and that sort of waif-like look that she had. And she does the vocals as well. She captures the mannerisms and the voice. It is quite an uncanny performance. And you do feel a certain sense of tragedy in her performance. But you also, you feel, you're aware of her beauty and her striking looks, which I don't think were necessarily Amy as she went on through life, as she became more raddled with drugs. But Amy here never loses that particularly, even in moments when she looks as if she's going through the ringer. It is a sanitised film, clearly, and as I said, I don't know enough about the truth of Amy Winehouse's life and what she went through, her relationship difficulties, issues she had with her father, issues she had with Blake. As I said, I'm aware of all the newspaper headlines of her stumbling out of clubs, the stories of her being drunk and dishevelled on stage and being booed off stage. And I think the companion piece to this film is the documentary Amy, which came out a few years ago, which I must watch. And in fact, I'm quite keen to watch quite soon because I want to fill in the blanks. So I know that a lot is left out and a lot is presented in a slightly cleaned up way. And so there are things that frustrate about the film, that you know it isn't getting to the down and dirty, if you like, of Amy's life, which I'm sure was at times very difficult. She had an abusive relationship with Blake, who was portrayed by the press as the sort of evil Svengali figure who lured her into a life of booze and drugs. But that was in her nature anyway. And it suggested that the relationship was a two-way toxic thing. But the film never really shows us that. We see the aftermath of incidents between the two. Blake is portrayed as sort of a happy Jack the lad, really. And, we're told that he takes cocaine and he's on drugs. But it doesn't destroy him the way it ultimately destroyed Amy. So there are things not to like about the film. There are things to be frustrated about, as there always are with these films. The Queen of Freddie Mercury film, you never really got to the core of Freddie, the outrageous Freddie, the flamboyant, debauched Freddie. Similarly with Elton John, you saw the sort of tantrums and tiara side of him, but it was more about the talent, which I think these films should be, really, because you're celebrating someone's talent. And I suppose the filmmakers have to make a judgment call on what they show of the darker sides of these people. But I think with Amy Winehouse, because sadly she is more remembered for those darker times than what the talent that she had and the success she had, you do sort of feel that perhaps there should have been a slightly grittier emphasis on the tough stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to be frustrated about, but there's a lot of stuff to like, and I did like the film. I really enjoyed it. I sat there for 2 hours, not knowing a great deal about Amy Winehouse apart from the songs, and it certainly sort of taught me a bit about her, but it is the sanitised version. There's no getting away from the fact that it's a sanitised, Hollywoodised version of Amy Winehouse's life, albeit on a fairly moderate budget, I think. But it's a good film and an enjoyable film, but I think when you go into watching it, you have to bear in mind that you're not being told the whole story, but you have to bear in mind also with these films that you never are. I think there were similar criticisms about the recent Bob Marley film. I dare say there'll be similar criticisms about the film based on Michael Jackson's life called Michael, which is coming out in just a few weeks' time, which I'm really looking forward to. But it's a very good film in and of itself, with that little proviso that it's a slightly airbrushed story. But it's certainly worth seeing for incredible performances. Eddie Marsan is terrific as Mitch. Again, he's a divisive figure because we're told that he was a bit tougher and a bit more manipulative than we see him here. But I think Eddie Marsan brings Eddie Marsan to him rather than Mitch. Say Jack O'Connell is superb. But the kudos really goes to Marissa Abila, who is just astonishing in this film. highly recommended then. For all its faults and omissions, it's a fascinating and captivating film. It kept me gripped all the way through and interested. More than some genre films that I've seen recently, for example. This is a proper film, and I really appreciated that. It's in cinemas now. It's Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse story, directed by Sam Taylor Johnson. I'm going to recommend this with a good hearty 7.5 out of 10. 7.5, which I think is a fair mark. I don't think we can expect these biopics to get under the fingernails, the grit under the fingernails of these things, because that's not what they're intended to do. They're box office films. They're crowd pleasers. And I think if you make them too bleak and too despairing, you will possibly alienate the fan base of the person that you're making the film about. Right, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this review of Back to Black. Like I said, really enjoyed it. It's well worth a look. And thank you to the new subscribers. A few new subscribers have come aboard the last few days. You're very welcome here. Hope you stick around. If you're new, if you've just come in to see my Back to Black review, meandering as it's been slightly, please stick around. Press the like button. Subscribe button, rather. It's not a like button, is it? Press the... You think I knew at this. I've been doing it for years. Press the subscribe button. Thumbs up for the video and leave a comment down below if you've seen Back to Black. What do you think of it? Are you going to see it? Just leave a comment, would be nice. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.